lasciarlo seminare l'amore.
Where there is hatred, let me sow love.
Dove ci è ferita, where there is doubt, where there is despair,
To be understood as to understand. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned.
it is in dying that we are born again.
It is in dying that we are born again.
It is in dying that we are born again.
To eternal life. Lord, make me an instrument of yours.
Amen. Please remain standing for the national anthem.
Good morning, everyone, to Cebu, to San Carlos University in Cebu. Welcome to this Japanese-Philippine Conference for Restoration and Conservation of Cebu and Bohol Island Cultural Heritage. This conference is part of the program of Japan Foundation Conference Abroad. It is organized by the Japan Society for ASEAN Pacific Property Studies. It's in collaborate with the University of Shiga Prefecture and the University of San Carlos, and also with the collaboration of the Agency of International Cooperation of the Spain Embassy, the Escuela Taller de Muros, and the Fuji Women's University in Japan, and the Nara Women's University in Japan. I want to give special thanks to the Director of the National Museums, Mr. Jeremy Barnes to attend this conference. This conference is the first conference made in Visaya after the last year earthquake. We try here to meet Japanese and Philippine experts to exchange experience and discuss about the restoration and conservation of Cebu and Bohol Islamic heritage. We have a long day, three sections divided in planning, technique, and vision for the conservation. We have 15 speakers today. I hope we can have enjoyed. I hope we can learn today in this event. Thank you very much. I would like to the participant of the reception. The Dean of CAPA, Mr. Mitchell Spina. We start for now the first section, the construction planning strategy, with 6 speakers. The first speakers, every speaker have a time of 20 minutes, please.
To our distinguished speakers, our guests, students and faculty, good morning to all of you. Welcome to our humble abode, the College of Architecture and Fine Arts Theater. Today I was tasked to deliver a lecture on planning towards resilience and sustainability. Basically, a response by the academe to the effects of the recent twin disasters which hit our country last year. Global warming and climate change is a reality, which for island nations like the Philippines and Japan have brought about a keen awareness for resilience and sustainability. There shall be 2 parts in my presentation. The first part will be an overview of the recent disasters which focused worldwide attention to the Philippines, as it served as a wake-up call for all of us to respond. The second part of my lecture will delve into what we are doing in the academe at CAFA to address this dire situation through what we believe we know best, and that is through planning. Allow me, therefore, to walk you through our experience. the actual damage to the belfry of the Santo Niño Basilica on October 15 last year. So these are pictures of the damage. You see there the remains of the belfry. Even until now, it looks like that. But if you look at that particular thing there, that's the lantern which was fell down intact. So we believe that was one of the primary causes of the collapse, because it was filled up with concrete in the after the war in 1945. It was repaired and filled up with concrete, became very heavy. When the crane pulled it up, it weighed about 7.5 tons. Okay, there are also damage to other heritage sites. These are pictures of Karkar in Cebu. We were in Bohol yesterday, and in Dalaget, Cebu, one of the most badly damaged churches here in the south of Cebu. The College of Architecture and Fine Arts, through the Heritage Conservation Heritage Research Institute and Workshop, we call them this CAFA Cherish, responded through rapid assessment, documentation, and restoration. So first, we were able to do rapid assessment barely a week after the earthquake, which, by the way, happened during the semestral break. Our students and faculty were quickly mobilized to conduct rapid assessment surveys to all churches in Cebu. Various cherished teams were sent to document and assess the damage. Most of the damage were observed to be on our heritage churches in the south. So you see here pictures. Even Professor Miyake came over a month after, and we did some initial assessment of the damage. This particular documentation, done by Cherish in, I think, the year 2008 or 2009, became very important now, because we have actual drawings and dimensions of the belfry here shown, and is now being used by government institutions like the NHCT and the NHI and the management teams as valuable references towards future restoration works. These are other documentation in the form of conservation management plans. You know, Cherish has been there since 2005, documenting mostly the churches here in Cebu and some in Bohol. These are ongoing restoration activities of the Basilica, pictures of the recovery work conducted by Escuela Taller with the assistance of Cherish and Professor Melva Hava. So you see there the big chunk of the lantern, which is still intact. So that was grid laying, and then they were putting them in boxes marked and storing them properly. And then the bells were also retrieved, but there are 5 more bells that remain in the top of the tower, which are difficult to retrieve. So the ongoing activities now is to support the remaining structure by, you can see that now, before we take off the remaining bells. A second Dateline News headline, November 8, 2013. was the height of the typhoon. This was taken by a news reporter while he was there in Tacloban.
So we have storm surge starting to flood the ground floor of the hotel. The residents are evacuating up to the second floor.
The devastation and loss of lives was even greater than the earthquake. These are pictures of the disaster in the Tacloban, where a huge storm surge produced by the super typhoon leveled off the entire city. The aftermath is total chaos and despair. In northern Cebu, which also lie in the typhoon path, the damage was similar, except for the storm surge. Many houses and structures were blown off and people displaced. Some of the pictures show the immediate relief organizations by many local and foreign relief organizations. CAFA's Institute for Planning and Design, or IPD, quickly responded by doing temporary shelters, designing temporary shelters, transitional and permanent. So these were the activities in CAFA after the typhoon. Is Professor Shigeru Ban visited CAFA and did an exercise on the paper tube shelter, this temporary structure, and our visit to the northern Cebu sites. So this is also a temporary structure done by some of our alumni and students together. This is called the Cocoon with the United Architects of the Philippines. So these are the permanent, transitional structures that was designed here in CAFA. You can actually see this at the lobby. Now we are building these homes in northern Cebu with our Institute for Planning and Design. These samples are for our permanent structures designed by IPD and made of compressed earth blocks. Okay, so the students are working. Actually, we have sites also in housing areas in Mandaue and in Cebu. The twin disasters which happened woke us up to the realization that disasters such as these are bound to happen again and that we must prepare for such. We have mobilized our graduating students to study concepts on resilience and sustainability through planning. In a strange twist of coincidence, the City of Cebu has been tapped to join the Livable Cities Design Challenge 2014, a nationwide competition among cities in the country, for a proposal which embodies all the livability principles. The competition is sponsored by USAID in cooperation with other organizations such as the APEC National Organizing Council, the Asia Society, the Urban Land Institute, the World Wildlife Fund, Microsoft, and Azure. Our proposal is the Green Loop, now also in cooperation with Mega Cebu and the Movement for a Livable Cebu. So this is the disaster preparedness preparedness framework that our National Disaster Committee is following. If you see, the first phase is actually mitigation and preparedness before response and recovery. So what is important to us really is these two, the preparatory phase before we go into a disaster, which is already response and recovery. So here in the academe, we focus on these two, mitigation and preparedness. Resilience and sustainability, these are two buzzwords which have recently come to the fore as a result of climate change and global warming. The question really is, what is the difference between these two? Most often, these two words are loosely used to mean the same thing. Resilience and sustainability need to be linked, but first of all, understood. Resilience is more often described as a process of bouncing back from a disturbance, with an engineering focus on rebuilding and recovery. But more than that, it should refer to adaptive capacity, or the more ecological concept of capacity to adapt, thereby retaining functions of structure, feedback, and more importantly, identity. In Cebu province, the battle cry is now build back better. While on the other hand, sustainability is the capacity of the system to absorb disturbances and reorganize while undergoing change. It refers to the city's capacity to change in order to maintain identity. Therefore, social ecological resilience leads to sustainability. Controlled densification is the key to a sustained future. Densification, this is in terms of population, infrastructure, social ties, biochemical and economic flows. A proposed concept for this socio-ecological resilience planning in Cebu is the Green Loop. Now we are trying to study this with our graduating students here at GAFA, proposing a green loop all around Cebu. So this is the map of Cebu. This is the Mactan Island. There are two existing bridges, but we are proposing a third bridge in the south, which will link the historical district over here and the tourist areas in Mactan. So this is just part of the green loop, and I'll explain later how it continues all around until Mactan Island. Just to give you an overview, in 1980, the Metro Cebu Land Use Study, where I was the land use planner, proposed the urban limit, a boundary which defined the limits of urbanization along the eastern coast of Cebu. Among other considerations, including both man-made and natural, the urban limit basically defined the boundaries beyond the 18% slope. So you see here, the green line is the urban limit, which was supposed to be considered unbuildable. The limits fell on the transition areas between the foothills of Cebu and the steeper mountain slopes beyond. You can actually see the foothills here from afar. This is the level of Cebu Plaza Hotel. It's about 200-meter elevations. But the fact remains, an imaginary line such as this urban limit has no specific technical description identified. The urban limit was not seriously pursued in the following years and appreciated by succeeding administrations. But the fact remains that it is a physical boundary which delineated suitable building areas from unsuitable and costly developments, and therefore proved to be a natural boundary which held back urbanization for as long as it could hold. Where policies could have been drawn to respect and promote this urban limit, it was unfortunate that this was left unattended. Beyond the urban limit are the forest reserves of Cebu. So these are the forest reserves of Cebu, actually the source of our water. And you know the problem now of water here in Cebu. Saltwater intrusion has now penetrated the island up to about this point near the capital area. So that is because of over-extraction of groundwater. So now we are proposing that this be preserved, this area be served as a source of water and sustainability. More than 30 years later today, the pressures of urbanization have placed developments going beyond the urban limit. So you can see now the red line beyond the green line. The Trans-Central Highway, built in the 1990s, that highway running along, going to Cebu Plaza, towards Balamban, was a catalyst towards the opening up of areas beyond the urban limit and into our forest reserves. New developments were built along the highway, largely uncontrolled and which promoted urban sprawl. At other areas along the urban limit, the boundary has been breached to accommodate many high-end subdivisions. The recent spate of high-rise condominiums are now threatening a new wave of more intensive developments beyond the urban limit. It is becoming more evident that the sustainability of Cebu may hinge on our ability to control urbanization towards our forest reserves. So the urban limit is a strategy towards consolidation. This shows the Green Loop studies with the third Mactan Bridge proposal done by CAPA, now being pursued by a private investor, the Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation, for a possible private-public partnership project. They are now conducting feasibility studies and hopefully begin construction by next year. It is a strategy towards integration. It is not enough to divert developments towards Mactan. In essence, the development must also be integrated to promote interconnectivity and compactness. The proposed Green Loop is a concept which aims to consolidate major land use developments into an integrated whole. So if you see here, this is the third connection to Mactan. This is the historic district. This is the trade and financial center. This is the manufacturing, high-end manufacturing areas in Mandawi, and we propose it to be a design and creative hub. And this is the tourism and recreational zone in Mactan. So 4 major land uses connected through the Green Loop. It is also a strategy towards green environment. The Green Loop is a concept which employs various green initiatives such as the e-jeepneys, eco-friendly public toilets, rainwater harvesting, flood control, retention cisterns, solar-powered street lamps, underground cabling, natural urban farming. Both the Butuanon River in the north and the Guadalupe River in the south incorporate the ridge-to-reef concept of conservation, where rivers are brought back to life by improving its ecology. And the Green Loop is also a strategy towards innovativeness, creativity, and competitiveness. It is largely pedestrian-dominated corridor which promotes and encourages a much lower living lifestyle, which is more human and socially oriented compared to the fast-paced lifestyle promoted by vehicular modes. It is a strategy towards livability. Livability simply refers to making more choices available. So choices can refer to almost anything, including housing, transport, or mobility, infrastructure, accommodations, work and employment, and even food. The Green Loop, when populated with pedestrians, will develop places where people feel secure and safe. Spaces are designed to human scale, familiar and comfortable to people. Landmarks and nodes can be appropriated for people to identify themselves with and develop a sense of security. It is a strategy for culture and historicity, so this is what we're concerned about. With the third connection to Mactan, below the main approach of the bridge is a major park proposed to link up the north and south historic district. So this is the model made by CAFA students earlier. If this is the third bridge, there's a park in between which links the north and south historic district. The Cherish is now working towards an ordinance declaring the historic district of Cebu as the district as a historic district. But the problem is we need some documentation for the study. Okay. Finally, it is a strategy towards disaster preparedness and resilience. If you look at this map, actually this is the whole Metro Cebu, divided into three main clusters: the northern cluster, the central cluster, and the southern cluster. I am also working now with the JICA study team for the planning of the Metro Cebu area. So this is what we are proposing. So since this is the northern cluster, the generally work, live, and play environment in the north, and also in the south, in the Naga-Karkar area. In the center is the central cluster, where we propose the green loop to consolidate and integrate developments in this area, and thereby reduce the urban sprawl towards these north and south areas. This is the green zone, which we are proposing to protect the green environment, and it's also a wildlife corridor from the coastal areas to the mountains. We propose a mangrove area here, the south of Mactan, to protect the historic district and the Mandao area. The entire city can be protected by these mangrove areas. You notice the earthquake in Bohol produced about a 1.5 meter wave in Dalaget. That was from the experience of the locals. But that was because the earthquake, the fault was a reverse fault. But if it happens that the fault is a normal fault, similar to the Japan earthquake, it is possible that a tsunami could hit the entire city of Cebu. So these mangrove areas could be protected. In northern Cebu, we experienced that a lot of houses behind mangrove forest were not touched at all compared to those which are exposed. So as mentioned earlier, there is a difference between resilience and sustainability. We need to be building social, ecological resilience with a clear understanding that moves beyond recovery and rebuilding following a disturbance. Additionally, resilience needs to be linked to sustainability so that the resilience we are trying to plan and design actually helps us move towards desired future sustainable system states and not undesirable ones. Current resilience planning and management efforts may just as likely be locking our urban systems into undesirable trajectories away from sustainability. So finally, this is the map of the prioritization plan. We are proposing that first we'll develop the central core and then develop the outlying clusters, the north and south cluster, and then link them up with a mass transit system from north to south of the Metro Cebu area. The Green Loop is a concept which incorporates the 6 attributes of the Mega Cebu and aims for resilience and sustainability. A vision which will bring us through the next 30 or so years if properly addressed and implemented. We must recognize that this vision can only be realized through collaboration and cooperation among the 3 spheres of influence in urban environment: the government, the private sector, and civil society. It is in this vein that the Green Loop is presented for the public to appreciate and understand. Let this be the seed that is planted here at CAFA, hopefully to be nurtured and eventually take a life of its own. So with that, thank you and good morning to all.
Thank you so much, Sir Yumi. And I'd like to welcome everyone again to College of Architecture and Fine Arts. And forgive me for my tardiness. I'm a very bad example, sir. I'm sorry, because we actually did an all-nighter last night. Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker will be speaking about the comprehensive planning for the protection of cultural heritage against natural disasters. She is a research associate at the Cultural Policy Program, the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies. She specializes in cultural heritage studies with a particular interest in protection of cultural heritage in case of emergencies, including armed conflicts and natural disasters. Since 2010, she has served as a member of Japanese delegation to UNESCO meetings for the Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict. She has also been involved in Japan ICOMOS National Committee and in charge of administering the affairs of its secretariat since 2010. Please help me welcome Professor Mariko Fujioka. A round of applause, please.
Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to say thank you to the conference organizers for giving me an opportunity to talk in front of you, and also for organizing the site visit to Bohol Islands yesterday. It was a precious opportunity to feel what people here are facing with. My presentation is a comprehensive planning for the protection of cultural heritage against natural disasters. I know most participants today are architecture people, but this presentation is not limited to the architecture conservation, but address overall heritage protection. Architecture conservation is included as an element in the comprehensive protection planning of cultural heritage, and well-prepared, coordinated planning among relevant fields can better assure the timely, feasible, and effective sustainable heritage conservation. So I will talk about our frameworks. Today, I'll begin by describing the basis of protection of cultural heritage against natural disasters, and then go on to explain the concept of risk management of cultural heritage. Then I'll introduce some examples of national and international measures, and I'll finish with final remarks. First, I'll talk about priorities in disaster relief. Needless to say, life safety is a top priority in emergency activities, and recovery, infrastructure, medical treatment, healthcare are also essential issues which directly and closely relate to human lives. Cultural heritage likely to be put off until later. However, cultural heritage also need to be safeguarded likewise for their values and significance. Then what is the value and significance of cultural heritage? It's a general issue, but I will review it here. Cultural heritage is significant as a source of personal and local identity. And significant are the possible vulnerable community and a record of our past history and current lives. I would say what generates a person's values and identities is the cultural and historical environment he or she was born and raised. It means such environments, often recognized as cultural heritage, become a key to restore communities back to everyday lives after disasters, and a key for people in disaster-stricken areas to regain cohesion, dignity, and confidence. And as another significance, we can point out that it is a key to socioeconomic recovery and development in terms of reconstruction. Heritage is closely relating to tourism, so it could be a source of employment, income, and a way to fight against poverty. And finally, it is valuable as an asset common to all humanity. The point is, it is important not just because of cultural or historic value, but also because of its essential role in human reconstruction. However, in times of disaster, there are other vital issues, as I said, and the situation itself must be too chaotic. It's too late to start thinking about protection after something happens. We need to prepare ourselves in peacetime. Okay, and this is a brief example of a disaster type. We have natural disasters and also human-induced disasters like armed conflicts, terrorism, fires. And human-induced disasters are out of the scope of today's session, but there are many similarities in situations and countermeasures between two types of disasters. What makes when making a preparation is all risks need to be inclusively considered. We need to know what kind of disasters could have what kind of negative effects on cultural heritage. We may establish both a comprehensive plan and individual plans for each disaster type. And let me say what heritage to be protected against disasters. As shown in the slide, any cultural heritage could be negatively affected by natural disasters. It ranges from tangible to intangible, from movable to immovable, and from soil building to environment and intangible traditions. All of them should be regarded as an object of protection and salvage. Normally, multiple authorities and laws are concerned with governing heritage, which cause sometimes sectionalism, but all the categories of cultural heritage need to be inclusively included when making a preparation. And now let me move on to the introduction of risk management of cultural heritage. Risk management plan is a comprehensive plan that can apply to various categories of cultural heritage and different types of disasters. Usually, risk management is largely divided into three stages: the preparation stage before the disaster, response stage during or immediate after the disaster, and recovery reconstruction stage after the disaster. Efforts in all the stages are crucial, but I would like to put a particular emphasis on the preparation stage as risk preparedness. We cannot control the occurrence of natural disaster, but can mitigate its negative effects by making preparation. If you expect emergency services or military to respect heritage during their relief activities, you need to work closely with them in peacetime. And if you work in the chaotic and often paralyzed circumstances, responsive countermeasures and operational mechanisms must be ready to be active with adequate authorization at that time. Success or response and recovery largely depends on the degree of preparation. Considering that, it's clear these three stages are consecutive and partly overlapping, so comprehensive is important also in terms of time scope. Here are the targets of each stage activities. In preparation, we do reduce risks to prepare ourselves. In response, to gather and share information, salvage heritage properties, and give first aid to heritage, assess the damage caused, and in recovery, which includes repairs, restoration, retrofitting, rehabilitation, reconstruction. But this is not an inclusive list, and depending on the situation, each of the targets can be required in other stages as well. So it is interchangeable. Here I am listing the principal preparative measures, which includes assess heritage vulnerability and strengthen the resistance, make and keep cultural heritage inventory and maps, compile an expert list with contact details and specific skills, identify various resources to be mobilized in emergencies, raise awareness for vulnerability of heritage and significance of heritage among the public and the professionals, collaborate among different heritage categories, work closely with emergency services like fire brigades and police and military armed forces, and develop and review emergency action plan and manuals. It's also essential to think about risk management of cultural heritage in wider contexts. Risk management plan of cultural heritage need to be integrated into other plans at theoretically and politically higher level. That is, conservation management plan for cultural heritage is a general plan for heritage protection, and the overall disaster management plan as well. In particular, integration into disaster management plan is essential for timely and coordinated action and for winning a general acceptance of heritage conservation efforts during the response stage. Okay, and now I'll move on to the introduction of actual case. First example is Japan. Japan had two massive earthquakes in the last 20 years. Great Hanshin earthquake in 1995 and Great East Japan earthquake in 2011. Great Hanshin earthquake became a trigger for risk management discussion of cultural heritage in Japan. Since 1995, the importance of awareness raising and preparatory measures have been recognized and stressed in many occasions. Emphasis in post-disaster discussion was particularly put on need on an exhaustive inventory of cultural heritage, integration of a concern for cultural heritage into comprehensive disaster plan, collaboration and cooperation among different categories of cultural heritage, close cooperation with emergency services, and need of permanent organization to ensure peacetime and emergency actions. Those were the discussion just after 1995, and in 2011, in response to the Great East Japan earthquake, the Agency for Cultural Affairs in Japan got two projects started. One is Cultural Properties Rescue Project. It aimed at salvage, temporary treatment, and temporary storage of movable properties. Another one is the Cultural Properties Doctor Dispatch Project. Its purpose is damage assessment and giving technical advice for architectural conservation. Experiences of Great Hanshin earthquake and other later disasters were fully made use of, but there are still problems. Both of the projects are temporary projects with their own budget and dedicated personnel. Communication between movable and immovable fields, between local governments and ministries, and between heritage fields and emergency services could be improved. In reality, since 1995, we could see scientific, technical, and legal development in heritage conservation field in Japan, but in my view, organizational issues have not been so advanced. Japan is still in the process of developing the risk preparedness for cultural heritage. Here, as an advanced example, I would like to introduction and Switzerland measures. In Switzerland, Protection of cultural heritage is integrated into emergency response program of civil protection. Swiss civil protection system consists of 5 elements: police, fire brigade, medical service, technical service, and protection and support service. Heritage protection is given legal status in this system as a task of the protection and support service. Under this system, networking is also sounding. Role sharing between federal, provincial, municipal levels is clearly established. At municipal level, coordination between heritage people and police and fire brigades is kept in peacetime. They are sharing heritage maps and doing training for rescue of cultural properties together in peacetime. This Swiss system is structured very systematically and internationally highly regarded as one of the implementation model. Next, I will introduce an international initiative, International Committee of the Blue Shield, and for short ICBS. ICBS is a network of 5 NGOs dealing with cultural heritage. Those are ICOMOS for immovable cultural heritage, ICOM for museums, IFLA for libraries, ICA for archives, CCAA for audiovisual archives. It's a mechanism in which 5 NGOs with different specializations keep networks and collaborate and coordinate each other in peacetime in order to meet and respond to emergency situations. But since it is just a network with its own budget, office, and staff, the ICBS itself does not conduct operational activities. Its functions are encouragement, capacity building, international collaboration, cooperation, and diplomatic service. And there are national committees of Blue Shield. It's a national initiative with the same aims as the ICBS. An official recognition as national committees is done by the ICBS. Requirements for the recognition are provided as you see in the slide. According to the Blue Shield website, 23 national committees are existing and 25 national committees are under construction. Within each of their own countries, they bring together the different heritage professions, local and national governments, the emergency services, and the armed forces. They provide a forum to improve emergency preparedness by sharing experience and information. ICBS is a diplomatic network, and a national committee is a practical network among practitioners and officials from relevant fields. This mechanism can be understood as a comprehensive mechanism to facilitate the collaboration and cooperation among national committees. Association of National Committees of the Blue Shield was established in 2008 with the purpose of coordinating and strengthening international efforts to protect cultural heritage in emergencies. Expected functions are roles of communication center, archive and resource base for the ICBS and national committees, and facilitate our communication between the Blue Shield network. Blue Shield organization is modeled after the Red Cross and Red Crescent movements. It is expected to be cultural equivalent of Red Cross. However, it is not so widely known and does not have a strong basis for its operational activities. Also, relationship and division of roles of 3 bodies may look unclear. Blue Shield organizations are in the process of development, but personally speaking, credible heritage organization which could neutrally and individually act as Red Cross must be a good idea. Disaster inevitably bring about unforeseen circumstances which need prompt decision and cutting across the boundaries of ministries and agencies. In order to respond quickly and flexibly to such situations, a mechanism like Blue Shield, composed of multiple various organizations, should have a great potential. To end my presentation, I would give an episode at the time of the Great Hanshin earthquake. At that time, in response to the earthquake, the Agency for Cultural Affairs dispatched a small expert team of heritage buildings to see the situation and do damage assessment 1 or 2 weeks after the event. But on site, a man from suffered area got angry with experts, saying it's a critical time for human beings to live or to die. And what are you doing? Why cultural heritage? We understand his feeling, but at the same time, we would insist that heritage is not just an object, and damage assessment and first aid are important for long-time recovery projects. This episode implies sound preparation to ensure effective response requires various perspectives, including technical perspective and humanitarian perspective. The last slide shows useful resources. Risk management of cultural heritage is one of the important issues in the conservation and management of World Heritage. I think this would be a help to improve our preparation as well. And this is all for my presentation, and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Professor. So, I hope everyone's doing fine over there. Are you comfortable with your seats? Don't sleep on us, please. Anyway, for our next speaker, he's a priest of the Diocese of Tagbilaran, Bohol, and served as diocese in many capacities. He began church cultural heritage work in 1993. That's the year I was born. And chairs the Tagbilaran Diocese's Commission for the Cultural Heritage of the Church. He is the Executive Secretary of the Permanent Committee for the Cultural Heritage of the Church of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, otherwise known as CBCP, since 1996. And he represents the said CBCP Permanent Committee in the Monuments and Sites National Committee of the National Commission for Culture in the Arts, NCCA, from 1997 till 2004 and 2007 until present. Excuse me. He is a canon lawyer by training, having obtained his degrees in canon law along with his philosophy and theology degrees at the University of Santo Tomas, Manila. He also pursued graduate studies in linguistics and music at the same institution and obtained his Master in Cultural Heritage from UST in 2009. Only very recently, he concluded his 3-year term as Assistant Secretary of the Apostolic Nunciature in the Philippines, the diplomatic mission of the Holy See of the Vatican City-State. Please help me welcome the Chairman of the Diocese of Tagbilaran's Commission for the Culture Heritage of the Church, Fray Milan Ted Torralba. A round of applause, please.
Adjong buntag kaninyong tanan. I will assure you I will not deliver a homily. Very short sermon na lang. When architect Juan Ramon Jimenez approached me just moments ago, he warned me